Okay, welcome everybody. We've got an exciting show tonight. A human who doesn't need much of an introduction, but I'm going to give one anyway. And by way of introduction, I want to introduce the holder of the longest putt on TV, recipient of Chip of the Year 2018, recipient of Tee Shot of the Year 2017, the only golfer to be on my top 10 list of golf shots ever played twice, the owner of 564 different swing thoughts, a person that would rather surf than drive a car, a person that loves playing guitar, and also someone that might have won a world championship at some point. So, Damon, thank you very much for joining us under the hat.
It's a pleasure to have you. There's the cover of Autosport for you. Yes, I did win a world championship at some point, but not in golf, and that's the frustrating thing.
Not in golf,
Gavin.
I'm trying not to make this about four wheels as much as possible, unless we're talking about golf trolleys. But anyway, welcome. I think this is such an interesting chat because I've known you for well over 10 years now, and I've tried to coach you on a number of occasions, both formally and casually. And it's a constant battle and a constant challenge, but always great fun. And I love watching your struggle in pursuit of competency, I think is probably the best way to describe it. And tonight I want to dive into how both of the sports, one of which you specialized in and did exceptionally well at, and the other you're still working on, how they compare and what the similarities are in terms of performance. So that's kind of where I want the conversation to go. But welcome, thank you. Over to you to have your retort to my introduction to you.
Well, Gavin, thank you very much. And hello to everyone who's tuned in. Thank you for listening to this. I don't know what I can possibly contribute other than I am someone on the receiving end of coaching. And I think it's a fascinating subject because Gavin knows me very well. And he knows I'm probably someone who's uncoachable. I don't know. Maybe this is a challenge for all of you. Maybe you can find a way to coach the uncoachable. But if you were talking about comparisons between car racing and golf. Well, we don't really get coaching. I mean, they coach now a little bit with the use of, or with the progress of computerized and simulators and stuff. They can coach drivers a little bit. But when I started, and for most people, they just went to a go-kart track and you basically the only thing that was coaching was the lap time. Although Lewis Hamilton's dad, or Lewis says that his dad used to stand on the track and say, "Brake after me." He used to kind of encourage him where to brake and just pushed him all the time into braking later and later. But it's very rudimentary. It's very difficult to actually pass on the information. So most of it is made up on the hoof. As a racing driver, you just get given a set of circumstances and you either prevail or you don't. But how you get to the lap time, it doesn't matter. They don't care as long as you go fast. So that in some ways, our sport is quite simple. And the other thing you can have to say about it is it demands concentration, because if you don't concentrate, you're going to crash. So the moment you get moving, you're concentrating the whole time. Whereas of course with golf, you are trying to get to a level of concentration and then you stop and then you walk to the next shot and then you try and get your concentration back. And I know that obviously top golfers are concentrating the whole round, but it is a very much more up and down discipline compared to my discipline. And if I hit a bad shot, it doesn't really matter. Whereas if I get a corner wrong, I get hurt. So there's quite a big difference there.
Yes, unfortunately, it's the Portuguese Grand Prix this weekend, and your upside down car tends to make it across social media whenever this race is on, which isn't the best place to be, of course. But I'm keen to explore, you know, for instance, qualifying's changed in recent years compared to when you were competing. But preparing yourself for one opportunity, for one perfect lap, is similar, although not as although much longer than hitting one golf shot when it really matters.
No, yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah, and I think
So
I'd have to say,
I mean, you were very good at it. You were very fast. So how did you prepare for that? I mean, was there a mental process you went through to get ready?
yes, I think without it being written down or thought about, you get to know yourself, and you get to know the state of mind you need to be in. I did remind myself the other day. I was reminding myself when I was racing bikes, I just couldn't get any performance out of myself. And then one day, I had a massive panic on just before a bike race because I got a puncture, and the race was about to start. So I had to really go like a maniac to get this tire repaired. And I was absolutely pumped up before I got to the grid. And of course, when the race started, I was flying because I was so pumped up. So I learned by mistakes in a way, you know, how to get the best out of myself. And so that pre-shot routine thing with golf, I understand the need for it. And I sort of had a pre-shot routine without really consciously describing it before a race meeting. But it was more, you don't want distractions. You just get your helmet on, and as long as you've got your overall zipped up properly, and all these things have happened, and you're not in a kerfuffle, you're not in a fluster, you're clear in mind, and you have eradicated all distractions, then something else takes over, and you don't really need to do it. I think the actual driving the car itself creates the concentration, and you go to a level. That's all I can describe it as. I know that if I push the car fast enough, my instincts of what to do will take over, which that's no good for a golf swing, because as you all know, how do you know when to start the backswing? You know, with us, we go out, we come out, we know when the start line's coming, we can see it coming, and the moment we go over that line, we're on a lap and we just keep pushing. Whereas the golf swing, you could stand there all day before you know when to hit the ball. But something triggers that moment you need that feeling that I've got it, I know I can hit it before you take the backswing away. But how that works, I have no idea.
I think that's an interesting.
I mean, you have. No, go on, Stu.
Yeah, I was just going to say that whole trigger system is such an interesting point in golf coaching, I think, Damon, because sometimes you'll see that somebody has a specific trigger that can be detrimental to the movement or the pattern of the golf swing, but changing that trigger system can be quite a complex thing as well. Like you say, if you know where the start finish line is and you know you're crossing it, that's your trigger to go. I'm on a timed lap. Where, like you say, in golf, you're static for a period of time. And I think that's where the routines and understanding as a coach somebody's trigger system, or working on it with them, because changing somebody's trigger system or changing something at the start of their swing, you need to be very aware of what the trigger system is. Otherwise, you can really mess somebody up, in my opinion.
That's another thing with golf and coaching, isn't it? That I've heard it quite a lot, that some people have had a great swing and they've gone to see a coach and then they've had problems for the rest of their lives. So you have to be so sensitive to the person that you're helping, because you might not be helping them. You might, this whole idea of changing the way you swing and stuff is fraught with danger, isn't it, as a golf coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that something we work hard on in our certifications and the training that Gavin and I do with a lot of our team around the world is all about being able to understand the intricacies of the golf swing, the mechanics, but more to the point of understanding the individual. How do you communicate best with them? How do they learn best? What is their body capable of? What limitations do they have? And, you know, there's lots of swings. I think now coaching's definitely changed. If you look at the swings on tour and you take the world #1, Dustin Johnson, for example, you look at how his arm works out and away from the body, the left wrist bows, the club closes, but he matches it up with how his body works through the ball. So what looks traditionally or textbook in a different place, or wrong as some people would term it, actually works for him. And he hits a little, when I say a little, he hits a strong shot that's a fade, but he's an incredible athlete. Interestingly, is on the LPGA, you don't see lady players swinging that way, because I don't think it would work for them for the most part for a strength point of view. You look at players like Matt Wolff, who's maybe a bit of an outlier, but there's definitely players there. You know, Jordan Spieth grips it very weak in the arm. Justin Thomas has a little bit of a different move. And I think coaches now embrace that individuality, where certainly when I grew up, and Gavin, you and I kind of grew up, there was much more of it was more form over function, where I think coaching now is much more function over form, I would say.
So you look at the results, not how they got there. So Jim Furyk could turn up and you'd go, okay, that's good, Jim. That's how you want to do it. So we'll work on what you're doing there.
Yeah, I think a good coach would. I think a good coach that really understands it's about the consistency of how the delivery of the club comes to the ball. And I guess everything's about the collision, isn't it? It's the collision of the club face with the ball.
Yeah.
And I think now one of my questions a little bit would be, in golf now you see players, even at a young age, seem to have a real big team around them. Parents are investing more in their kids, and they've got maybe a sports psychologist or a mental trainer. They've got a fitness guy. They've got a swing coach. They maybe then go see a putting coach. One of the challenges I've seen is that the communication from all the people involved sometimes isn't good enough, and sometimes the egos of coaching get in the way, and ultimately the player gets lost then, because the messaging to the player can be meant in the right way and for the right intentions, but isn't consistent enough. Where Formula One, for me, when you look at a team, you look at kind of, it always seems such a well-oiled machine. The pit crew, the team managers, everything. I'm sure the stuff goes on in the background, but you look and you think, for that to work, the communication must be on point. The team must be really versed in how do we get the best out of each other. And I'd be interested to kind of get your thoughts on how that was when you were competing and how you see it now compared to maybe what you've seen in coaching from your own game, in terms of if you have multiple people involved.
No, I completely understand. In fact, it reminds me a little bit of when you were describing different coaches. It's a little bit like the medical profession, isn't it? Because sometimes you go and see a doctor and the doctor will prescribe this, but he's not aware that another doctor you might be seeing would be prescribing something else. Mm-hmm. And to getting all that stuff joined up is really important, because it's the patient ultimately who is getting all the different inputs. And I can see how that happens in coaching with golf, but with motorsport, you mentioned the use of the term well-oiled machine. Well, of course, all those people are there for the machine. Yeah. They're not there for the driver. The engineers, there are driver coaches, and they look at the data and they talk to the driver about how he might be able to get more performance because on the simulator, because they'll have a guy back in the factory doing laps on the simulator, and they will say, but the simulator driver is doing what the engineers tell him. So I've used this analogy before. If you think about tennis, some tennis players are good on clay and others are good on grass, and that sort of happens. That's the way they play tennis, and coaches work with the way they play. But if you were to try to make a tennis player do what you think is the right thing for playing tennis, then you might be losing them a major talent, because you might actually be stopping them from doing what comes naturally. And our sport is quite different in that respect, in that, as I said, they come up now from they're very young, and they get in a cart and they've got data and stuff, but basically you can't explain it to them. They're doing it instinctively. And and they'll learn to be quick. They might get a few tips along the way, but now as they get to close to Formula One, they get a lot of coaching in technique because the teams have found their setup on their car works best if you drive it this way. And I'm worried that what that does is it filters out people who are pretty good, who actually, when they get to F1, they could say, listen, I don't drive like that. Do you mind if I change the car to suit the way I drive? And then you'll get a better result from the car. And I think that is a danger, because when I was driving, they didn't have all this data, and basically the engineer listened to the driver and then changed the car to suit the driver. And now it's gone the other way around.
Wow. Yeah. That's fascinating to hear. Yeah. No, thank you.
That is. I wanted to just back up a moment and just revisit maybe some of your European Tour performances, Damon, and find out what it was like for you to play under those conditions. So you've done a couple of pro-ams here and there and whatever, but you've also played in the Dunhill Links, which is as close to any mere mortal playing on the European Tour. So how did you feel then, putting your tee in the ground and teeing it up on the first hole at St Andrews as an example? How were you able to cope with that?
I think there has to be an element of the performer in a sports person. And I think that we like people to watch us doing stuff, and I think we also are able to cope with the fact that if it goes wrong, it's not the end of the world, where I think a lot of people feel acutely embarrassed about people watching them, and what if it goes wrong and the whole world will cave in. And I don't care. I mean, I'm fortunate in that my major career is behind me and nobody's expecting anything of me. And if I do anything remarkable, I get a lovely round of applause, which is fantastic, because I don't get that normally when I'm playing. So it's all it's all positive, and it's that mental trick that you play, which is, this can only be good. I'm enjoying myself, and that is so much more part of. I've heard that talked about a lot more now in sport, about encouraging the performer to enjoy the experience. And the old famous saying of Jack Nicklaus is, when you're at Augusta, don't forget to smell the flowers. In other words, don't just go around Augusta and be so focused you don't actually enjoy the experience of being in this incredible venue. So for me, going to an event, I love it. That's what I just love, taking part in the competition. The whole discipline of it excites me.
And of course, it would be remiss of us not to mention the fact that you have holed the longest putt ever seen on TV at the Dunhill Links Championship, right?
Well, you say it's the longest putt. I can't believe that's true. What about that? Anyway, it was a long putt. I'll be honest, it was a long putt.
Yeah, I think you need to explain it somewhat, because it was rather spectacular. You came with Graham Storm, weren't you?
It was at the Grove. Is that the one? Yeah. It was at the Grove, wasn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, and it was an undulating green, and I was on one edge, and the hole was the other side, and there was basically it went like this for about 30 yards or something, and it went in, but I have to say, I have done things like that before, more when I was younger, but not now. And I just suddenly relax and just feel it. I just feel what's happening. And the ball has done those remarkable things, like go in on the last hole to win a match or something. And there's an element of luck, obviously, but there's also an element of that Zen state, getting into a Zen state of just letting go and letting your unconscious do the rest. But the sad thing is, I was wearing these awful plum corduroy trousers that because my friend I play golf with hates people wearing corduroy plum trousers, so I wore them especially. So now it's recorded for all time. with me, these ghastly trousers on. Anyway, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So just talk us through, and if you have any questions, I wanted you to be able to ask a couple of questions of maybe us and some of the coaches watching. But
yeah,
what are how do you play golf? That's a broad question.
Okay. How do I play golf? I want to be better than I am. I want to be able to turn up and exhibit a level of competence that I would be pleased with. And I probably do, but I mean, there's always these awful shots and rubbish shots that come in, and I always end up with the same score. I basically get around at about 85 around Hankley. You know, that's, you know, a good round I've broken 80, bad rounds I'm closer to 90, but I never get any better. It's always the same, and I'm sick of it. I want to break that thing, and to do that, I'm going to have to get rid of the rubbish shots, the shots that kind of come out of the blue, or I hook it, or, you know, I just can't get rid of them. Anyway, but what happens is I turn up, as I said, and I don't know which swing to use. I've got so many different methods, and yet I was mentioning this to you, wasn't I, the other day? I've got what is in my mind, because it's the problem of subjectivity. So my experience is subjective, but your observations as a coach are objective, because you're seeing what I'm doing. So I could stand there and hit 100 balls, and it would never feel the same to me. And that drives me crazy, because I want it to feel the same. I want to be able to go up and go, this is my grip, this is my backswing, this is how I time it. I can't repeat it. It just is like that thing when you shut your eyes and you try and keep a cross from moving in your brain. Your brain is always moving to a new place. It doesn't like staying in the same place. So you kind of move away. You find something, but then you move away from it, and suddenly it feels different. And the next day it's not there, and that's the bit that drives me absolutely balmy about this game.
Well, of course, you think you do have a lot of different swing thoughts, but the swings all generally look the same. You know, it's a timing difference, it's a tension difference, an approach or an attitude difference, I guess, from what I see. And it's I mean, it's we had this chat before we came online tonight about I guess outcome versus process, or indeed process versus outcome. So I very kindly have you twice in my top 10 list of greatest shots ever played. And,
yeah,
you know, we were talking about this driver you hit into the par 3 7th hole at Hankley Common. So how, I mean, that materialized because of a set of thoughts that led up to the execution of that shot, right?
Yeah, so it's a, 160, 170 yard par 3 over a massive, it's quite a famous hole 7 on the course, and it's a great par 3, but the green there's no ground to play with. You have to land it on the green.
187, by the way. I don't want to do you a disservice.
It's 187, is it? Yeah. Okay, so it was a heavy wind. So I can't get there with an iron. I'd usually take a hybrid or something, but this was blowing a hoolie. So like suddenly all the plans have to go out the window, and I have to think, how the hell am I going to get a ball from here to there? And I think, I know, I'm going to have to hit a stinger with a driver, and I'm going to have to cut it so that it stops when it lands. It's no good having it scuttling through the back. So that's what I did. You know, I teed it up low. I went down the shaft, and I gave it a short backswing and just punched the thing. And it went like that, sort of lovely little fade, and stopped on the green right by the flag. I wouldn't. I mean, but I wonder whether that's. We were saying. I wonder whether that's because it's. I wasn't trying to reproduce a shot that I'd practiced the perfect, iron shot on the range, because that's what we're all after when we go down the range. I want to hit a lovely straight 5-iron, with a perfect trajectory. I was creating something, and because I was creating something, I had nothing to fall back on, or I wasn't looking for something. I was just doing an instinctive shot. Maybe.
And there's, that must, for me, speak more to your approach, doing what you've done for a living, whether it's on 2 or 4 wheels. That bringing out that instinctiveness surely has to be more of what's going to give you better performance. I mean, you think that would be your mentality.
Yeah.
I mean, given that, I mean, there are some scary tee shots out there, and I think we all get very inhibited, don't we, when we stand up on a tee box and it's a full tree-lined fairway. You've got really tall pine trees, and there's no room for error. It's a bit like driving around Monaco, I suspect. I think you were relatively successful around Monaco. So how did you cope with that and the pressure of such a narrow pathway through the barriers? And how could you translate that then into hitting tee shots on rails?
Yes. Well, I think there's some element of it being helpful to have things by the edge of the track. So if you think about Woburn, for example, we've got fairways that are lined by the trees. The trees tell you what the direction is of the curvature of the. If you go to an open links course, there's nothing. There's nothing. You get a hoylake. You can't see the blooming fair. Where it's over there somewhere. It's flat. You've got no landmarks at all to guide you by. So I think in some ways it's a bit easier because you don't have any choice. At Monaco, you simply have to follow the track, and you just try and use a little bit more room as much as you can, but you're basically constrained. So, and I think also the idea, I think a lot of beginners or a lot of amateurs have the idea that the best shot to hit is a straight shot. So if you've got a curvature, there's a place called it's near Cobham. There's a little short golf course in amongst oak trees, so it doesn't matter if you go under the oak trees because you can still get out of there and stuff. But nearly every hole is a dog leg. So what it means is you stand up, you're going to have to hit it left to right, or you're going to have to hit right to left. You don't ever try and hit a straight shot, because the straight shot is the most difficult shot to hit. Yeah. So, and I think a lot of people come to this sport and they think, I've got to hit it straight. So when it goes off to the right, they go, oh no, it's gone off to the right. Well, maybe you should hit it like Lee Trevino. Maybe that's your shot. And how many golfers now have gone from trying to draw it, or pro golfers have gone to trying to put a little fade in there.
Yeah. Would you drive Monaco at 100%?
No, that's a good point, actually. No. I mean, I've never driven out of my skin in Monaco. I've driven some fantastic laps, but I've never gone. You're always coming back thinking you've left a bit on the table. Yeah. That's a good point.
And I think it's like that when we're inhibited with a tee shot or a shot. If we're not fully confident about a shot, or there's some doubt, we very rarely commit to it 100%. And I always think that if you are fully committed to every single shot you play, then the outcome will kind of be what you expect it to be. Whereas if you aren't fully committed, you open yourself up to some inconsistencies.
Which is, of course, the difference between the range and the golf course, because you're free on the range, you get another ball, and you go to a golf course and suddenly you kind of go, ooh. But it's those times when you let go, isn't it? When you go, right, there's nothing. It's like you've lost the match and you go, oh, what the hell? And you and you suddenly start playing brilliantly. Yeah. So, but that's a gamble, and that requires trust, and that requires a lot of experience, and knowing that you can trust your abilities. Or someone like Rory, you know, somehow the doubt creeps in there, and it's now he's not sure whether it's going to work. Whereas when he was younger, he probably never thought about it. He just got up there and did it. Which I do have a question here for all the coaches, which is with this Instagram thing, you can now go on those, you know, golf Insta channels, and you can see young kids who are babies virtually with perfect golf swings. Now, that suggests that it's natural, but I'm damned if I can find that natural thing. How is that? Maybe I should play with a plastic golf club.
On your knees for a month, yeah. That would be like punishment, wouldn't it? Well, anyway. You know, there's a lack of fear, isn't there? You know, we teach fear as we get older. It naturally we teach it to ourselves. It just naturally comes in, doesn't it? Because you start to understand consequences, whereas kids don't, and they've just got wonderful free range of movement, and they have a great capacity for copying maybe what they see on TV, or you know, if their dad's a decent golfers, they try and copy that. I'm very fortunate that both my two have copied my amazing abilities, but it's I think
people should, you got two very fine golfers' sons there, but you know, why didn't you teach it to me? That's what I had to pay for you to teach me. But what's the problem?
But you were always too old. That was the problem. You were always too old.
So Gavin, when a young person comes along and you give them a golf club and they start swinging away, and you're saying, okay, just swing the club and try and hit the ball. At what point do you step in? At what point do you go, you're not doing it right, that's not right? Or do you never say that?
It's a great question, because nowadays it's very much about play. Go play, learn the art of playing golf. Quite early on, my instructions are hit it as hard as you can.
Hit it as hard as you can.
Try and encourage full range of movement, then try and apply some balance to it. Let it be natural as much as possible. If I'm being honest, the technical stuff is very short on supply until they get to a point where they're fully engaged in the sport. And I think, you know, the technical stuff really comes in very much in their teenage years. And, you know, when they are in their foundational years, we're trying to build an athlete. We're trying to build movement and mobility effectively, so that they can use that foundation and apply the technical elements as they get a little bit older. So I mean, that's kind of where we go with that.
And what about these? Sorry.
No, carry on.
I was going to ask, what about these robots? You know, these things that teach you where to hold the club. I've heard that a lot of Koreans now do this all the time.
What do you think to that, Stuart?
Yeah, I've not heard so much about the robots, but I think you've got to look at each individual. Everybody swings it slightly different, but how they deliver the club to the ball is generally quite consistent based on the ball flight that they want. So if somebody wants to hit a consistent draw, we know the club face needs to be slightly open at impact, with the path of the club going more to the right if you're right-handed. If you want to fade the ball, the club face is slightly closed at impact, but less closed than the path. And I think as a coach, it's more just about managing, is that repeatable? Is that a consistent movement through the ball for that player? I worked in South Korea for 1.5 years, a very different culture, very similar. I've never worked in China or Japan, but I would imagine that it's very, very similar. I think you see, or maybe more so when I was out in Korea, which is 15 years ago now, but access to the golf course for young golfers was really, really difficult. It was still quite an elitist sport. It was so expensive to play. Kids would get on the golf course more in the afternoons when the members had finished going out. Things have changed a little bit. There's more public courses out there now, so the kids would be constrained to the range. Parents would invest in the kids' games. So, and the way that golf lessons tend to work in South Korea for the most part is you don't buy hourly lessons, you sign up on a monthly deal. And when you go to your driving range, the pro is always there and they walk the line up and down. So if you're there, your pro's going to come and see you, but it might only be 10 minutes and then they move on to the next. Then they come back and see you a bit later. But there's always somebody keeping a check on you. And the fact is that they're just hitting thousands and thousands of balls. It is very technical. So you see lots of kids, maybe not thousands in my experience, but lots of young players that would technically look fantastic. And you would watch them on a range and go, wow, they should be on tour. They look fantastic. They swing it 10 times better than me. They hit it great. But then when you would actually go and you would watch them play a tournament, they didn't have then the skills or the art of maybe getting it round the golf course like some of maybe the European players, because they were non-stop on the golf course and maybe less on the range. But if you look at the female game, the Koreans have obviously dominated for a lot. You haven't seen as many males come through. I think I would have put that down to nearly all of the males get hit with military service. And it's just at that time where they're getting to 18, 19 years old and maybe getting ready to really compete. And they get hit with about a year and a half worth of not being able to golf or compete. Where for the females, it was a little bit different. And you see an abundance of talented or high quality elite golfers in Korea. But yeah, I think there's much more of a focus on the technical side of things there. But that doesn't always translate into them being fantastic players. I think more drop out of the game there than you actually see successful. But the fact that they dominate so much on the LPGA kind of makes you think that they all do very well.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So just keen to start to field a few questions for you. So whilst you guys watching get ready for your questions, Damon, we've got the quick fire round.
Sure.
So I've got 10 questions for you. You've got 5 seconds to answer each question.
Hold 5 seconds. Okay.
You ready for this?
Go on.
What annoys you most, a 3-putt or hitting a drive out of bounds?
Hitting a drive out of bounds.
Got that wrong. Favorite golf course?
Yeah, I can't do it. I don't know. Valderrama.
Okay. Worst F1 golfer you've ever played with?
Oh, God. Worst F1 golfer I ever played with. Martin Donnelly, because he used to hold it cat-handed and beat me.
Most competitive golfer you've ever played with?
Me.
That's a good
Does that
answer.
count?
Yes, it does, because that's very valid. Dream 4-ball.
Oh,
You
dream
and 3 others.
4-ball. Okay, yeah. Okay, but Lee Trevino. Alice. And it would have to be Jack Nicklaus. Oh dear. But it froze there, Gavin. Did you get that?
Lee Trevino, Jack Nicklaus, and who else?
Lee Trevino.
got some major freezage.
We're at freeze, and we're back. So what I said was Lee Trevino, Sevi, and Jack Nicklaus. Does that age me a bit?
No, that's awesome.
That's a great.
Doesn't get much better than that. Hopes for your golfing future.
Hopes for I hope I kind of. I would like to get into single figures. I'm 12 at the moment. Okay. 9 would be triumph.
It's possible. The golf course you'd most like to play?
Probably it would. I would say Augusta, yeah, or Pebble Beach, yeah.
Okay. Why do you play golf?
Where do I play golf? Hankley Common.
Why?
I'm a member of Hankley.
Why?
Why do I? I have no idea. I have no idea.
A final question. Who's your favorite?
I'm a compulsive, obsessive golfaholic, and because I'm also an eternal optimist, and I can't believe that it'll never get better than this.
Very good. And who's your favorite coach?
Oh, Gavin-GRENVILLE WOOD.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. That ends the quick fire round. Well played. You scored 10 out of 10 for that. Fabulous.
I thought you said I didn't score, that I got the wrong answer about the driver and the putts, but anyway. I should feel worse about 3 putting, shouldn't I? No, it's driving the ball. If you want to, if you can drive it straight, 250 yards, let's go. That's it. Job done.
Yeah. To be fair, I've seen you bounce up and down with annoyance at both. So
yeah.
Either way.
Yeah. No, I don't like. That's rubbish.
Okay, so I'm keen to open up the floor now to some questions. If you want to raise your hand, I'll start it off because I've got a question by mail. It's almost on topic. It's from Warren Sargent from Essex, and he just wants to know what's the best moment you've had in your career, either golf or cars or surfing.
Oh yeah, cars. I mean, the best moment is winning the World Championship. I mean, that's at the point where you become, not just an also ran. You've crossed over that important threshold. So it's our major. It's winning a major. It's you're suddenly one of the better bunch of people, drivers than all the other poor sods that didn't make it.
Indeed, and that obviously should have been your second World Championship at that point too. So I think that's probably worth saying, isn't it?
That's an opinion. Some people have.
Steve from Canada. Unfortunately, we heard today that Canada lost the Grand Prix and it's gone to Turkey. So that's a bit of a shame, but obviously COVID.
It is a bit of a shame. Yeah, what's going on? Yeah.
Steve,
I don't know, I'm Irish, so it doesn't really bother me too much.
He's Irish. He's not Canadian.
Once Eddie Irvine went out, we were like, yeah, we're gone. Ireland's out of this. I was just interested in in golf and certainly in the past few years, like visualization has been talked about an awful lot. And
yeah,
forgive my ignorance about motor racing, I apologize. But when you were towards the top, did you feel that played a large role in how you would form it in your own head a race, or were you more, I know this anyway, so I'm more focused on technique, or what was that breakdown?
No, it's very important. I mean, you have to. There's two. Our discipline is basically 2 disciplines. There's the qualifying, which is a 1-lap performance. Mm-hmm. So you would, before that, I would take myself off and try and do laps in my head. And it's really difficult to actually do a lap in your mind. But it just, even the process of getting in the car, just going through it all mentally, I mean, it was something that I did out of my own kind of invention, I suppose. But of course, it's been shown to be very important, and that your mind can't even tell the difference in some cases between imagining doing something and actually doing something. But so yeah, visualization is really important, and also the start of the race, because if you're say on the front row, you have to throw in the idea that you're going to lead into the first corner, or that you're not going to lead into the first corner. So you have to go through these scenarios. So if one of those things happen, you're not taken by surprise. So you try and prepare for all eventualities and imagine yourself in those situations. Although I did read a book once by a guy called David Hemery, who was a hurdler, Olympic hurdler, and he was anxious about a race. So he imagined himself not winning. And when it came to the event, he couldn't perform and he didn't win. And so you have to be careful you don't prepare to come second, for example. So you have to always think in terms of prevailing over whatever situation arises.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Damon.
All right, pleasure.
Here's a familiar face, Damon. Ethan, go ahead, buddy. Open your mic.
Hi, Damon. How did you like regroup yourself after after you spin out or you make a mistake on the track?
Hi, Ethan. I know that you're basically not allowed out, are you, Ethan? So you poor soul. We were supposed to be playing golf, but anyway, he's been forced into isolation. But so Ethan, good question. And also, it's a very interesting question because it sort of suggests that it's one of the things that you have a phobia about. Do you know what I mean? So the fact that you've asked the question it's already put the idea into your head. So it's a bit like saying, what if you hit it into the rough, or how do you get out of the rough? It's already put the rough, going into the rough, into your head as an idea. So you have to be a bit conscious about these ideas. So first of all, you wouldn't think about spinning, so before a race, you wouldn't think about spinning, but you also know that if you spun, you very quickly have to put whatever's happened behind you, and you're always in a default mode of doing whatever you can to get back in the race and recover your position. So you're always in recovery mode, and you're never going to sit there and think to yourself, oh no, for a moment. I mean, the interesting thing was at the Imola race last couple of weeks ago, where Lewis went off, I thought I heard him say on the radio, oh, I'm sorry, guys, I'm sorry, whilst he tries to find reverse. And then he posted some story afterwards about how he never gives up and he never thinks about, he never thinks negatively. But it certainly sounded to me like he thought he was doomed, So but he didn't give up, and he got his gear, and he eventually put up a good fight to finish second. But yeah, recovering after a mistake is a case of, well, accepting what's happened. And I think that's always very difficult when something you don't want to happen happens. Then it's very difficult sometimes to accept it, and it's very easy to spend a lot of time castigating yourself for it. I mean, I think John Rahm is someone who sort of spends a lot of time cursing himself, and you need to be able to go, okay, well, that's happened, so now I'm here, and defaulting to the now, not the past.
Yeah, you need a very strong personality for that, though, don't you?
You do, but I think when you're competing, it's easier. When you're not competing, I mean, when I'm just playing golf, I love wallowing in my, self-loathing. I just, I will spend hours going, you are that Campari idiot, and it's pointless, and also it's upsetting for the people you're playing with. one of the big tests of golf, isn't it?
You've never been that bad that I've had to walk off. So yeah, it's not been too bad, that's for sure. But you've come out with a couple of corking one-liners, that's for sure. All right, that was a great question, actually. And have we got any more questions for Damon before we wrap things up? I think time has flown pretty quickly. Stuart, you got anything else you wanted to ask or add to?
Yeah, I think obviously, Damon, you've been at the top of the tree in Formula One and and obviously other sports as well. But I think you see probably common traits or trends between top sports people around the world. And you've played with a lot of the world's best golfers as well when you've been playing in like the Alfred Dunhill and the BMW, etc. What would you say would you see as common traits between top flight sports people or sports professionals that you would kind of think, and is that something that you think you developed over time, or you just naturally had those traits within you, like the grit, determination, resilience, etc.?
I think it's the difference between being an amateur and doing it because it's your living. So I think that the difference you find is with professionals, this is their job, this is their life, you get a very strong sense that this is what they do for a living. And they are incredibly thorough, incredibly disciplined, and to want for a better word, they're professional. That's the term we use. And when I was racing, when I was younger, I wasn't terribly, I thought I was very good as a driver, but I wasn't very terribly professional, and I didn't think enough about what else I could be doing with my time. So there's never a downtime. There's always something you can be doing. And so I think I wasted a lot of time. And I think when I got to Formula One, I realized that there isn't any time to waste, and you have to be, if you're not doing something from dawn to dusk to help you perform better, whether it's going to bed early, eating well, doing training, if you're not doing those things, you're not giving yourself the best chance of success. So they're better prepared in every way for what they're doing.
So would you say that your attention to detail over the years just got better and better and better just because you realized that I'm not giving myself maybe the best opportunity, I'm not using my time wisely? Yeah,
I think it's more the fear that you will miss an opportunity. What you don't want is an opportunity to come by and you're not ready for it. You can't take advantage of it. So you constantly prepare so that whatever happens, you're there to jump in when and do what you need to do. Obviously there's time, even downtime becomes being professional because you can work yourself to death. So, there has to be a time when you go, okay, I've hit enough balls today. I'm now going to go and rest and relax. I'm going to do something different because that is also going to help you perform better. So it's, you can shape your whole life around what you're doing, and you shouldn't feel guilty if you take time off because that's important. So opening your eyes and going and see something different, going to an art gallery or something, to goodness sake, go and do something different, not just be a lab rat, because we have seen a lot of sports people, young sports people, suffer because their life was only about hitting tennis balls or golf balls, and they get depressed about it, and that's no good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. Thank you.
All right.
Were you suggesting, Damon, that had you been more professional, you'd have got into F1 earlier?
No, because the opportunity wasn't there. My career was it was interrupted really because my dad died when I was 15, and I never really got into a career path when he was around. So it was for a long time I wandered around the earth and not knowing what I wanted to do with myself. And then when I finally decided, I was already in my 20s. So but that's a good point. I really could have done with some guidance. If my dad had been there, he would have saying, well, what are you doing this weekend? You need to be doing something, or you need to do this. Someone to tell you to point you in roughly the right direction would have been helpful. Yeah.
Interesting. How do you, if you don't mind, I wanted just to ask a final question about Josh and parent-child in high-level performance. Josh was a very fast driver, but what did it feel like when he decided to walk away from it? I mean, was there disappointment there, or was there relief?
I have to be honest, and I think Josh needed to do it. I think he needed to find out whether that was him, whether that was his mission in life, that was his vocation. And I think he found out the answer. And I think he found out that it wasn't what he wanted to do with his life. And so I'm glad that he took the decision that he'd rather go in a different direction rather than doing something because he thought his parents would like him to do it, or, you know. And I think that's business of leading a horse to water is really important for a parent to be able to navigate whether or not their child wants to do it and is driving the program, or whether you're driving the program and they're just going along with it. That's quite a difficult thing to do, because there's always a crisis at some point where the child goes, oh, I can't be bothered this weekend. I don't feel like doing training. And at that point, you have to say, you have to ask yourself whether or not you should push them, or whether you should say, okay, well, then they're clearly not focused 100% on doing this. In that case, I think Lewis went through a bit of a wobbly phase. You know, when you've been coached from a very early age, there comes a point where you kind of feel like you wonder whether you're doing it for other people or whether you're doing it for yourself. So those are, you know, the long night of the soul of a sports person, of a younger sports person. They need to find out whether it's them that wants to do it or whether they're doing it for other people. And that's quite a tough one. I don't, you know, it's very difficult for a parent to work out how hard to push.
It must have been difficult, obviously, because there's a huge legacy that he might have felt he needed to kind of live up to at some point. But I think certainly what's unique about F1 is if your heart and soul isn't into it, then that could be quite a dangerous set of circumstances, can't it?
Absolutely, it's a dangerous sport. I mean, you know, I wouldn't mention any names, but I know there are a lot of drivers there who are doing it because their parents or their dad wants them to do it, you know. And you look at them and you just think, oh God, I hope you're doing this because you really want to do it. But then things are never that black and white, are they? I mean, but you know when you meet someone who wants to do it, who is keen, because they just won't leave you alone. They will come and they will go, I want to hit more balls. I want to go training. I want to go. They drive it.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, look, we have hit pretty much 60 minutes, Damon, and I've found the chat extremely fascinating. I really appreciate, as does everybody, your insights into your own journey through this golf ball whacking game. And I certainly hope that you find peace and harmony with it.
I doubt that's ever going to happen. But I love it. I'm going to play on Friday and I can't wait. I can't wait to go up there, you know, stick that tee in the ground on the first and just go off into the unknown. But I want to say this is really interesting, talking to experts from another discipline. I think it should happen more, perhaps, because we can learn a lot from each other. All sport is, there must be some common denominator which we can all you know, learn from each other, and it's been interesting, because I don't think there could be two sports that are more different than golf and racing driving, but maybe there's something there which is the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, thanks very much. Really appreciate it, as everybody else has done. And Good luck on the first tee on Friday.
Well done, Gavin. Thank you very much. Stuart, thank you very much. Thanks
Thank
to
you.
our friend in Canada and all the questions. Thank you.